Political leader tipped as a future leader of the most populous nation on earth is sacked. His wife is accused of involvement in the mysterious death of an Englishman. The Chinese state media did what they've been told to do today and justified the removal of the Communist Party's rising star, Mr. Bo Xilai, while pretending that nothing very exceptional had happened. But something very unusual indeed has happened, although it's not exactly easy to find out the details of what and why. Paul Mason has been doing his best.
In this ancient Chinese game, the object is to surround your opponent, to make his next move impossible and eliminate him. Now, amid allegations of murder, it looks like China's leaders are playing the game for real. Chongqing in western China, a city of 30 million, ruled until now by one man. Bo Xilai rose through the ranks of the Communist Party to become the boss of Chongqing and the country's third most prominent politician. He led a crackdown on crime and ordered people to sing revolutionary songs.
Bo Xilai is a very charismatic person, a very unusual kind of politician in China, because if China were a democracy, Bo Xilai would probably stand a very good chance of being elected. He can connect with people.
He cracked down hard on organised crime. He appealed in a sort of populist way to Maoist traditional feelings in China.
This year, with an imminent change in the party leadership, Bo looked set to win a place within the inner core of the Politburo. Now, he'd be lucky to avoid criminal charges. China's ruling party is divided from top to bottom between a pro-market wing and a wing that emphasises social harmony and wealth redistribution. And allied to them are men like Bo, rhetorical left-wing hardliners. It's a game that's usually played out in private. Bo threatened to play it out in public and with mass participation. But somebody, somewhere, made a fatal false move. Last November, Neil Haywood, a British businessman and friend of Bo Xilai, was found dead in a hotel in Chongqing. The authorities claimed it was alcohol poisoning. His body was cremated without autopsy. Then, in February, this man, Wang Lijun, Bo's security chief, entered a US consulate building allegedly to claim political asylum. He claimed he'd been investigating Neil Haywood's death and had discovered evidence that angered Bo, and now he feared for his life. After the Chinese premier denounced Bo in a speech, he was stripped of his post in Chongqing and last night suspended from the Politburo, and his wife was named as the prime suspect in Haywood's murder. But some China experts are convinced there's a bigger story.
This is not a murder case. Even though somebody might or might not have been murdered, we don't even know whether Mr. Haywood was in fact murdered. The whole thing is largely political. It started with Mr. Bo's top lieutenant going to the US consulate to seek political asylum, which would then make him a traitor and therefore provide the opportunity for Mr. Bo's enemies in the top leadership to strike him down. When Mr. Bo lost his job as the party secretary in Chongqing,
the British government, which has been pressing for an investigation into Neil Haywood's death, welcomed the move.
On the case of Neil Haywood, we did ask the Chinese to hold an investigation, and we're pleased that they are now doing that and stand ready to cooperate in any way that we can. I think it's very important we get to the truth about what happened in this very disturbing case, very tragic case.
But where does this leave the West's wider relationship with China? Roderick Y spent 30 years at the Foreign Office covering the country. Do you think the West gives credence to the essential story?
I mean, in a sense you have to, because the mind boggles at anything else. But there are huge gaps in that story, quite why people acted as they did, quite what the falling out was over, why someone as powerful as Bo Xilai's wife, leave alone Bo Xilai, should feel it necessary to have this really unfortunate businessman, Neil Haywood, murdered. I mean, it's extraordinary. What can drive someone to do that, and to expect that they can get away with it. And that's the sort of arrogance of power, and that's one of the worries, I think, that the Chinese Communist Party have. You know, if these people can behave like that to a foreigner, how on earth are they behaving to the people of China?
When you meet Chinese officials, they will sometimes speak quietly about this division within the party. They'd assumed the power blocks could coexist forever and that all transitions of power at the top would be orderly and negotiated. The strange case of Bo Xilai, to put it mildly, complicates things.
What we are in fact seeing is in fact the kind of old-fashioned court politics that one would perhaps have seen in a European court 400 or 500 years ago. So in that sense, we are not seeing China moving in the direction of institutionalization of its politics that everybody would like to see.
The events in Chongqing remain like the city, shrouded in fog. What is clear is that for the first time since 1989, there's a split in the leadership, and how the game ends is unpredictable.
Well, with us to discuss the many mysteries of the story are Martin Jakes, author of When China Rules the World, Bloomberg's economics editor, Dr. Linda Yu, and Dr. Yongjing Jiang, Professor of International Politics at the University of Bristol. How big an event, how significant an event is this?
Well, I think it's very important, because ever since Tiananmen Square and when the General Secretary was turfed out by Deng Xiaoping, there hasn't been anything like this at the highest level, or nearly the highest level of Chinese politics. And Bo Xilai, I think, is clearly he's met his political demise, but the backdrop to all this is clearly a major struggle taking place in the Chinese leadership over, one, the composition of the new leadership that will emerge from the Party Congress in the autumn, and secondly, over the policies to be pursued by that new leadership.
Linda, do you see it in much the same terms, in terms of a power struggle?
Yeah, I think it definitely reflects the fact that the Chinese Communist Party within itself has always had a number of factions, but it's just the glimpse that we're getting, which is really quite interesting.
It's fascinating. Is it ideological, or is it just about naked power?
Well, if I had to venture a punt on that, I would say naked power, because sure, Bo Xilai was associated with a lot more moves towards a state-led investment model. He was sort of popular in the sense that he was talking about an era of more equality, which a lot of Chinese people miss because of the high levels of inequality during the development phase. However, but I think if you strip it back, he clearly is somebody that was a rising star. But at the same time, the last time I was in China, it became very clear that most policymakers knew who the next generation of leaders were going to be, and he perhaps was jostling a little bit for his own position.
Professor, do you think we're likely to see more of this sort of episode?
Well, I mean, certainly this is not the end of the scandal or of this particular kind of event that we have looked at. Now, what is interesting, of course, is this kind of drama attached to this, partly because of this murder case and also the defection of the police chief, again, and also involving a murder of a foreign national, which is a British sort of a businessman.
It's so fascinating to an outsider, because all we see when we see the Chinese leadership is that there's a bunch of late middle-aged men in identical suits using identical hair dye. I mean, and this really opens up something fascinating, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's not late middle-age. It's all sort of in the 60s and so on. So it's interesting. I mean, again, this is a part of the political transition that we're looking at, and it's certainly not very smooth. I mean, as has been commented, this is not what we actually have anticipated. I mean, we all thought at some stage that institutionalization of political succession in China has been happening, and this time would be probably, I mean, from fourth to fifth generation transition would be relatively smooth. And now, of course, we don't know what is next.
And it's all taking place in a completely changed world, isn't it? In which people are tweeting and communicating, social media and all the rest. I mean, it's fascinating.
I mean, one thing that's very interesting is the extent to which this has become public, and it's being discussed and known about in real time, as opposed to way after the event, which used to be much more the case. So, and what's this a result of? I think it's the result of the opening up of Chinese society, internet, microblogs, a less censored media, and so on. So now the Chinese have, in some degree or other, however much we don't know, access to some of the key debates.
This is a big problem for the leadership, isn't it, then, if people know about it?
Yes, and I think one of the issues here is they're going to have to get used to it, because increasing transparency is something they can't turn back the clock on. And in fact, the fact that it is such high publicity involving a foreigner, and there's going to be probably more and more instances where China is going to have to become much more open about the kinds of issues that this case poses. Corruption, succession, responsiveness, ideology, development. These are all things that, as they become more globally integrated, foreign investors, foreigners who are dealing with China are going to want to see more of, and I think they're going to have to respond to that.
Okay, we'll come to that in a minute or two, but do you know anything about how it's being seen within China?
Well, I mean, you have a whole spectrum of different opinions, obviously, and from some kind of supporters of Bo Xilai's policies, particularly the policies towards kind of equality and social justice that Linda has just commented on. But also you have the other spectrum, which actually look at his maneuvering for kind of leadership position. So you have a spectrum of which is reflected in the microblog and Weibo, so comments. So you have millions of people using, I mean, close to 250 million people using Weibo. So this is the topic of the day. Really, everybody is actually talking about the Bo Xilai and what it leads to his downfall, and why, and what this tells them about Chinese politics.
And then we've got this intriguing element of this unfortunate man who died in China. The circumstances are very opaque. What is this going to do, given that the economy so much depends upon, or has depended upon, Western involvement? Not perhaps the primary challenge now, but what's it going to do to the way Western businesses regard China?
I think how they handle it will be crucially important, because this does come on the back of a Rio Tinto executive, Stern Hu, who was also imprisoned in China just a few years ago. And I think the ability of the Chinese government to continue to show that even if they're not a democracy, but they have increasingly improved rule of law and transparency of that process is going to be crucial. And in fact, if you look at what China needs now, Jeremy, I would actually say they need global integration, because the reason they've grown so quickly is because they integrated and caught up on manufacturing. And the next phase of growth requires doing the same thing on services. So that means more foreigners, more engagement with the global market. And I think one of the things that China has lagged behind on is reforming rule of law to catch up with its economic reforms.
The fact that his wife has been arrested, is she going to get a fair trial? I mean, is an arrest an indication of guilt? I mean, how does it work?
I mean, obviously they have a very kind of strong evidence. I mean, we could see from the report even by the Chinese media, and from the police chief, we don't really know what he has talked to the American consulate in Chengdu. But from the report of the Chinese media, obviously already sort of have some kind of evidence. And also this case will be scrutinized not only by the Chinese media and Chinese people, but also globally. So I would expect a rather fair trial of this particular case, at least.
But is the outcome in doubt? The outcome of the trial?
Why should it be in doubt?
So the judiciary is independent?
Well, I think they will present this as independent as possible, in the sense, sort of, because I mean, this again has a lot to do with the image of China.
Martin Jakes, how do you think the trial's going to go?
I wouldn't be too optimistic myself, but I think that if they've already arrested her, well, they said she's been being held by the judicial authorities, is the phrase. I think that they've already, and what they've already put out about it, that for the murder of Neil Haywood and so on, I think that she's going to be found guilty,
okay.
I mean, she may well be guilty, but I think she's going to be found guilty.
All right. Thank you all very much. Thank you.